And we've got big breaking news. There's been a breakthrough between Russia and Ukraine after the 6th round of peace talks that have just taken place in Istanbul. Russia has just announced that it has decided to drastically reduce hostilities in Kyiv and Chernihiv, two key cities near the national capital. The capital city itself and Chernihiv in the north are both cities that have been attacked by Russia for weeks together now. Russia has announced that it will drastically reduce hostilities in Kyiv and Chernihiv. The Russian negotiator at these talks has also announced that a Putin-Zelenskyy meeting is possible if accompanied with an initial peace treaty that could be negotiated and signed between the foreign ministers of both sides. This is the biggest development between both countries in 34 days of this invasion. Since it began on February the 23rd, this is, I'm telling you, I'm going ahead and calling this the biggest piece of progress since the war began. Russia has called for a continuation of dialogue. It has said that Zelensky-Putin talks are possible, and it has called an immediate and drastic reduction of hostilities in Kyiv and Chernihiv. This is going to be seen as a peace move. Is this being done under pressure? How will the Ukrainians be reacting to this? We don't know just yet, but a big signal coming in from Russia. Is this a course correction by Putin after failing to meet objectives? Is this a decision keeping in view that there doesn't appear to be any real forward movement in the overall objective to dominate Ukraine? How will this be seen by the Ukrainian government? How will President Zelensky react to this? He's the one who's been calling for a face-to-face meeting between himself and Putin, a proposal that has so far been rejected with contempt by the Kremlin and by the Russian government. Well, now Russia says that meeting is possible if there is an initial peace treaty that could be negotiated between both countries at the level of their respective foreign ministers who've already been meeting, remember, on the talks table. Big development, big piece of breaking news coming out of Istanbul, where the 6th round of talks have just concluded between Russia and Ukraine. This is a mini breakthrough of sorts, given the kind of devastation and destruction that has taken place non-stop for 34 days, a signal by the aggressor Russia that it is drastically reducing military activity and hostilities in the capital city of Kyiv and Chernihiv, which has seen widespread destruction and damage, is going to be seen as a big message. The reasons and the motivations for this message will be under debate. Remember, Ukraine has been very skeptical about Russian ceasefires, Russian promises, Russian statements, especially at the talks table. So it will have to be seen how this is going to be received. Gaurav Sawant is live with me from Kyiv. Gaurav, very big breaking news coming in from Istanbul. I'm sure you've heard already. The Russian side announcing that it is immediately drastically reducing hostilities in Kyiv and Chernihiv. What do you think, Gaurav?
Shiv, very big development. If hostilities are reduced, if there is less shelling in Kyiv and Chernihiv, this would be an indication that things are moving forward. Again, whether there's a meeting between President Zelensky of Ukraine and President Putin of Moscow will depend on what is the devil will lie in the detail. What is it that Russia is expecting from Ukraine, and what is it that the two foreign ministers of Ukraine and Russia are able to achieve in their conversations going ahead? That a lot will depend on that. But the initial information, but even as we speak, so you hear ambulances, you hear police sirens, you hear air raid sirens very frequently in Kyiv. Fortunately, there has been no shelling today in Kyiv, but Mykolaiv was targeted. Mykolaiv, a government building, was targeted in administration. Officials are feared trapped in rubble. But on ground, Shiv, in case after 34 days of conflict, there is forward movement, there is peace, there is some conversation that takes place between the foreign ministers that leads the way to a summit between the presidents of Ukraine and Russia. it's likely to bring peace to this war-torn country, Shiv.
Gaurav, the Ukrainians have been skeptical in the past about statements made by, Russia when it comes to ceasefire or reduction of hostilities. We're trying to connect with some Ukrainian MPs to get an initial official response, but the fact that Ukraine has been signaling that NATO membership is no longer on the table, it is willing to consider political and strategic neutrality, all of those things must have, played a part in Russia sending out this very important signal of reducing hostilities for the first time.
Shiv, you're spot on. Ukraine signaling neutrality was one of the principal demands because Russia had made it very clear it impacts their security. But Shiv, a lot would also depend on forward movement on two regions. One is Donbass and the other is Crimea. What would Ukraine's outlook be towards Russia having moved deeper into the Donbass region? Initially, 34 days earlier, they controlled only 30% of the territory. Now, according to Russians, they control 90% of the territory. According to Ukraine, it's between 70 and 90, but Russian tanks have rolled into Mariupol. So, again, what happens to the status of Donbass? What happens? Ukraine has so far been insisting that Russian troops need to roll back all the way to the line as on 24th of February. Will Russia actually do that, having gained control of a lot of territory in Donbass, plus Kherson, plus moving forward along the Sea of Azov? A lot will depend on what Ukraine is willing to concede and what Russia is willing to accept, considering from Belarus they're down beyond Chernobyl, virtually on the outskirts here of Kyiv, in Irpin, Bucha and Brovary. So how much will Ukraine concede? How much will Russia accept? A lot of that would be clear only in some time to come. And while neutrality in NATO is a very important aspect, there are several other things that Russia wanted that Ukraine will not accept, that President Zelenskyy will not accept, because if he does accept those lines, his popularity will go down in this country. Again, we will wait for the devil, like I said, Shiv, devil lies in the detail. What is the agreement on which they are moving forward? And reducing hostilities in the past also, Shiv, has been very tactical. They've reduced hostilities for a day or two and then suddenly bombarded various places, and that is why there's a lot of skepticism here in Ukraine when it comes to negotiations with Russia.
And there will be understandable skepticism, given what has happened so far. Rajesh Pawar also joining us live from Kyiv. Rajesh, in the context of what Russia had set out to achieve, what it has managed to achieve and not achieve in 34 days, how do you see this statement coming out of Istanbul after the 6th round of talks, that hostilities are to be drastically reduced in two key cities, Chernihiv and Kyiv?
Look, Shiv, I think when Russia announced that the first phase of its operations is over, what it meant was it has probably achieved its military targets, which were to have as much of area, almost 100% of area in Donbass, in Lugansk Republic and in Donetsk Republic. After capture of Mariupol, I think that objective was more or less achieved. Second military objective which Russia set to achieve was to have a land bridge between Crimea in the south and Donbass in the north, which again they have achieved in their military operations. Thirdly, it was to have some kind of water supply for Crimea, and by capturing the town of Kherson, they achieved that military objective as well. Finally, their last military objective was to somehow cut off Ukraine from the sea so that no military supply can reach Ukraine from the sea, and which also they achieved before they completed their first phase of military operations. So I think in these 34 days, they achieved all their military objectives, and now these military objectives they will use in negotiations to achieve their political objectives. Shiv.
Gaurav, do you think that, when Putin said, I will thrash them, that was something that was quoted to have been said by the Times newspaper. The contempt is there, the drama is there, politically speaking, between these two leaders. Earlier, when Zelenskyy had proposed a face-to-face meeting with Putin, it had kind of been rejected with a great deal of contempt by the Kremlin, and by Putin's team. Now there appears to be some leg room for a possible face-to-face meeting. So that is another very dramatic move forward. where Russia is saying, yes, there can be a face-to-face meeting between the two leaders if the two foreign ministers first lay the ground for that.
So it's for the two foreign ministers, as you rightly point out, Shiv, it's for the two foreign ministers first to lay the ground for a summit. Because if a summit is set to fail, it will be a major loss of face for President Putin, as will it be for President Zelenskyy of Ukraine. Though President Zelenskyy has repeatedly sought this summit with the Russian president. But what is it that he's willing to concede? You know, as Rajesh Pawar was also pointing out, militarily, to a large extent, certain aims and certain targets have been achieved. But the two principal roadmaps that had been set by President Putin before the start of this operation on the 24th of February was regime change in Kiev and demilitarization, and he's achieved neither of those objectives. The Ukrainian army remains a formidable force, though the Russian defense minister today claimed that the Ukrainian army had been severely degraded in the past 34 days, but it remains a fact that even in Kharkiv, Ukrainian army fights back and fights back strong. Kyiv is very well fortified. Kyiv is very well defended. Additional missiles have come into this country. There are reports that seem to indicate that America is also speeding up the manufacture of the Javelin anti-tank guided missiles, the Stinger surface-to-air missiles, the NLAW missiles from UK. The Star Streaks will all come into this country in the days and weeks ahead. And that's an indication that Ukraine is actually strengthening itself for the long haul. Peace or this negotiation may just be a tactical move by Russia or perhaps even Ukraine before both sides reassess their positions before the next course of action, because the aims set by Russia haven't been met on ground, either President Zelensky's regime change or demilitarization of this country.
Rajesh, you know, this face-to-face meeting that has, you know, appeared to be almost impossible given what's happening in Ukraine right now, does it become more possible now with the Russians indicating that, you know, yes, it can happen if the groundwork is laid, if the conditions are optimal? Do you think things are going to move in that direction now?
Look, Shiv, Russia also understands that as the long gets prolonged, they have a lot to lose. These economic sanctions are not small. They will start biting in the economy very soon. And Russia also understands that with the new weapons coming in and the number of weapons coming in inside Ukraine, they cannot stop everything from coming in. And that will have a devastating effect on their army, on the morale of their army, because the casualties in the army will increase. There have been reports of a lot of discipline problems, soldiers deserting in the Russian army. They know these problems will increase if this war prolongs. And the way things are going on, until and unless they reach some kind of solution now, it is heading towards a stalemate. And then it will be a frozen conflict, and it will take years before things can be done. So I think both the sides understand this. Zelensky also understands he is isolated. So both the things have their compulsions now. Both the sides have their compulsions to have a negotiated settlement. But let me also tell you one thing, that in case Zelensky goes for a solution, there are a lot of people in Ukraine who will not accept it. And I have heard from soldiers saying they will not even accept his orders in case it is seen as some kind of surrender to Russia. Over to you, Shiv.
That's very interesting, because, you know, you're making it very clear, Rajesh and Gaurav, that this is not just some, you know, Russia ne bol diya aur ho gaya. It's, you know, it's much more complicated than that. Even the conditions that have been set forward by Zelensky, as Rajesh very importantly points out, may not be acceptable to, you know, large sections within Ukraine. So there's, you know, this is clearly not going to be something that's going to be easy to digest. In fact, Rajesh and Gaurav, I wanted to quickly update you that we're also hearing that there may be a rejection of this offer coming in from Ukraine. We don't know. It's not official just yet, but there are some voices coming in that, you know, that Ukraine may have officially rejected this offer as well. Gaurav, how do you see that? You know, we don't know it yet. We'll confirm it once we get to our viewers. But like I said, Ukraine has been skeptical so far. They've said we are willing to negotiate if there is a total ceasefire. So it is not beyond the realm of belief to think that Ukraine may actually be about to reject this overture by Russia with the claim that, look, don't do this piecemeal ceasefire business or reduction in hostilities. You've got to stop the shooting, then we'll talk.
Shiv, because, you know, why this bears you know, testimony on ground also is what is Russia saying? They'll reduce hostilities in Chernihiv
Yeah.
and in Kyiv, but not in the Donbass region where they hope to consolidate and where massive battles are being fought every day. It's not as if Ukraine has given up on Mariupol. The Azov battalion, apart from the Azov battalion, even we are told the special forces and certain reinforcements are being sent to Mariupol to fight, to defend Mariupol. Ukraine is not giving up on Mariupol. That's the information that we have been given, and that would indicate that this is likely to be a bigger fight for the control of that region. What we're also being told is that there's a fight back for Kherson. Again, losing access to sea would be a major loss for Ukraine, and that is why they're mounting swift counterattacks. According to information that we've been given here, there have been Russian fatalities, and not just earlier losses of 48 hectares, but other fatalities have also happened on the Russian side, where Ukraine is fighting back. So Ukraine remains a formidable fighting force, and the Ministry of Defense insists that they haven't been degraded the way the Russian defense minister seems to indicate. Also, the additional weapons and systems that are coming in, the foreign fighters who are coming in, all of that seems to indicate that here is a force that wants to fight back to regain their territory. They are no longer fighting a defensive battle for the protection of Kyiv. Kyiv is fortified with a very large number of soldiers. More than 1 lakh soldiers have been deployed around Kyiv, inside and at several levels on the outskirts of Kyiv to stall the advance in every direction. Plus the fight back where soldiers are now being sent to other areas to fight and regain territory, Shiv.
This is going to get more and more tense because Russia, for the first time in 34 days, has signaled a drastic reduction in hostilities in 2 cities, but hasn't said anything about the other cities, like Gaurav and Rajesh pointed out, especially in the eastern part of the country. Big breaking story, obviously first and exclusive here on India Today. We're going to continue to bring you the latest on this breaking story on the other side. Special broadcast from Ukraine. Rajesh, Geeta, Gaurav, join us live on the other side. Stay with us.